Good afternoon and welcome to this Island Council meeting for this, the 26th day of May 2026. We begin with agenda point number 1, the opening. Please stand for the SEBA anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. We continue with agenda point number 1, announcements. I would like to acknowledge the presence of all of our Island Council members. Commissioner Zegers, Commissioner Haliger is absent with notice. We now continue with agenda point number 2, approval of the agenda. We take out, on the draft agenda, we had agenda point number 6, Island Council proposal 2026 number 1, SEBA language policy 2026 to 2030. This will be removed until a further forthcoming Island Council meeting. So then instead of 9 agenda points, we will have now 8. Yeah, and then agenda point number 8 is motion. And that was all read. That was also, well, the new agenda point 7, motion. We also have a motion that will be later on in the meeting. So we can approve the agenda. We now proceed with agenda point number 3, approval of the minutes. There was no minutes. There can't be any approval. Agenda point number 4, oral question time in accordance with article number 36. We begin with Island Council Lady, Ms. Elsa Peterson.
Good afternoon once again, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I have 2 topics I would like to ask questions on. The first topic is mobile coverage gaps. As we all know, there are still certain areas on SEBA where phone signal is either very weak or completely unavailable, including parts of Hell's Gate, Wells Bay, and the surrounding areas, etc. This is not only an inconvenience, but it also raises a serious safety concern. On SEBA, where our roads are steep, our communities are spread across different villages and many areas are isolated by nature, being able to make a phone call can make the difference between safety and danger. For residents, weak or no signal can mean not being able to reach family or essential services, and for visitors, It can mean being unable to call for help in an unfamiliar area. And in an emergency, it can mean the difference between reaching 911 on time or not reaching anyone at all. I therefore have the following questions. Considering the ongoing work related to the dismantling and replacement of the tower in Mount Scenery, can the Executive Council clarify whether the issue of weak or unavailable phone signal in certain areas is expected to be addressed as part of this project? If not, can the Executive Council indicate what steps are being considered to resolve these remaining coverage gaps? Can the Executive Council clarify whether mobile and telecommunication providers operating on Saba have any legal or concession-based obligation to provide reliable island-wide coverage? If such obligations exist, how are they monitored and enforced? If they do not exist, is the Executive Council willing to advocate with the relevant Dutch authorities and regulators to establish a minimum coverage standard for Saba? And my final question on this topic would be, given that poor coverage can prevent residents and visitors from reaching emergency services, does the Executive Council consider this only a commercial service issue or also a public safety concern that requires government attention and intervention? My second topic covers safety measures for Carnival 50. With Saba preparing to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Carnival this July, we can expect a significant increase in the number of people on the island. This includes visitors, returning Sabans coming home to reunite with family and friends, and of course, the already increased number of people on the island due to ongoing projects, performers, the list goes on. But with a larger crowd also comes a greater responsibility. Celebration must go hand in hand with preparation. Public safety, border control, crowd management, emergency response cannot be treated as afterthoughts. If we want Carnival 50 to be remembered for the right reasons, we must ensure that the necessary safety measures are clearly planned, properly coordinated, and communicated in advance. Considering this, can the Executive Council indicate what specific safety and security measures will be put in place to ensure the safety of residents, visitors, participants, and of course, the wider community at large during Carnival 50? Additionally, given previous concerns raised regarding open borders and the lack of sufficient checks, especially where it surrounds the topic of drugs and deadly weapons, which may be entering the island, can the Executive Council indicate whether additional border control inspections or cooperation with law enforcement partners will be strengthened during this period? Are these conversations being had? Furthermore, and this goes into my last question, in 2025, the Governor of Statia made a formal decision to allow the use of temporary surveillance systems during Carnival to increase public safety, assist police in responding faster, deter public misconduct and disorderly behavior, support investigations where necessary, and so on. Can the Executive Council indicate whether a similar temporary surveillance system or other additional public safety tools will be explored for Carnival 50? If not, what alternative measures will be taken to ensure proper monitoring, quick response, and public safety during this major event? And that concludes my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Island Council Member, Ms. Elsa Peterson. Are we going to go through all of them or just answer? How are we going to do this? Do everybody, per person would be maybe, oh, then it's more clearer for everyone as well. Okay, thank you. I will begin with answering your questions. First, regarding the mobile coverage gaps, this is a very relevant and real issue on our island. But Saba is a unique island, but also a very challenging island, as we all know, because we live here. There is one company that has a concession for mobile coverage on the island, and by law, by national law, the company which has the license has to have X amount of coverage. and that is checked by the RDI, which stands for the Rijksinspectie Digital Infrastructure. So they come here yearly to check on that, but as we all know, the coverage is not where it should be. The company in question would need to make the relevant investments on the island. There were talks with the company, with RDI in the company. So the local government is not party to those talks, but I am aware that they would put several repeaters on the island. To date, that has not happened because the company still has talks about the money which they make on the island and the costs having to be incurred. So it's a cost-to-benefit ratio, and they feel the market on Ceiba is too small, but nevertheless, they have to fulfill that requirement. As local government, this is something which we do address with the ministry as well, the Ministry of AZK, because they are fully aware that, you know, they have to meet this requirement. So it's something that is very relevant that we as local government, we also bring to their attention. With the new mass, they will come on the new mass also, how do you call that? What do you call those things? To repeaters and such. I got an email this morning that the company which provides services to the emergency services, the C3, they are going to put a repeater here by Paris Hill as well. So this is something which the Rijksinspectie, the RDI, they do take into account that they have to address this, and hopefully with the company that has a concession to have a mobile service on Ceiba, they can live up to that. The challenge we have, not only specifically to Ceiba, but also in the region, maybe you all had read as well, there was a blackout on a Thursday, on Ascension Thursday. There was a few hours where there was no service. Last week, a similar thing happened on Curaçao, because we have there's a few companies, but for us, there's one major company that has everything, mobile and also the other services. So this is a vulnerability which the ministry is aware of as well, because yes, we are connected with the SSCS cable, but the bandwidth after that is managed by only a few companies. And that is a vulnerability in our region. And that is the reason why they're also going to extend it to the cable coming from Europe, from Portugal, that goes down to Brazil, and then it will also tap into Guadeloupe and Martinique. And the hope is that Ceiba and Statia will also tap into that, and then down by Bonaire. So these are realities which we face and on our small island, but Satel is a small company as well. Satel has the local infrastructure and the local network, but then past Ceiba, they are also relying on bigger players that, you know, at times on an operational level, there's good communication, but on a more strategic level, the communication lacks. The supervisory board of Satel informed me last week, as much as possible, they try to, you know, have that contact with a bigger company, but that is always not there. So that's why we also relying on, together with Statia, that we can, you know, come together to see how we can improve the services for our two islands. So that's on the mobile coverage gaps. So it's something that will be worked on, but it's also challenging. The safety measures for Carnival 50. You asked about which specific safety measures. Yearly, in order for the permit to be issued, as part of that, a safety plan has to be prepared. And this is something which the various committees over the years, they have had to prepare together with us, with the Public Order and Safety and all the other safety partners. So over the years, we have a dry book, and this year's plan is still being drafted and finalized. and in collaboration with the different safety partners. So it's a draaiboek, a playbook, and we build upon it every year, and there's also things which we learn that should be changed, and we update it. So this is something which we do, and that is the measures which we take. For example, there's different operational protocols related to first aid, crowd management, parking, vehicle safety, the parades, and then ultimately with the last night, the fireworks during the lighting of the moon. You asked about, concerns with open borders and sufficient checks. It is a standard practice of KPCN that they provide additional capacity during Carnival. And also, we bring to the attention of the Customs Department that additional checks will be made prior to the Carnival season and also with the Coast Guard. And you made mention of what transpired on Statia last year to use the surveillance systems. What was quite unique is that this council in 2021 was the first island council of the 3 islands to make the special powers ordinance, and the other islands copied us. But at the same time, it's good to look at the effectiveness of the cameras because, yes, it can deter certain things, and the safety incidents and experiences during the Carnival has not led to an assessed or expressed need for this, but this is something which we continue to discuss with the police department, and should a need arise, they too can provide the temporary surveillance systems for Carnival and also for Sabre Day. So this is something which is dealt with in that ordinance. So these are the questions to your 2 points, and I take it you may have follow-up questions. I now give you the floor.
Thank you, Governor, for your responses. I just have, I think, just 2 follow-up questions. You mentioned that there will be a reporter on Paris Hill for emergency repeater, on Paris Hill. And you mentioned those are for emergency services. I would just like to know, with that additional repeater, will they be able to reach areas such as Wells Bay at least? Because I know that's an area many people venture to, and there's no service in that area at all. So if you could just clarify that. And also in regards to Carnival 50, of course, I acknowledge that every year there are plans in place and safety measures and a safety plan and all of those things, but my concerns were more based on the increase in population, of course, on the island, where, yeah, anybody can come to the Carnival Village, of course, and of course, many people will be visiting the island and so forth. So I don't think even with KPCN or any other safety services, of course, that you can continue to operate with just, for example, if you bring in 5 extra police officers, they would not be able to handle an increase of possibly, I don't want to put up numbers, but of course, an increase of people attending these larger events. And also my concern stems from, because if you go in the community every other day, you're hearing of threats, you're hearing of this, and increasing violence, and guns circulating, and the drugs circulating, and all of these things. So I think it's important that, through you, of course, that safety personnel are also more proactive instead of being reactive, because I think we also in experience, of course, what happened last year, and we need to ensure that these incidents, of course, never happen again. And this also just involves the continuous fighting, the continuous threats, and all of these things. And I think we all want to go out and enjoy Carnival. So it stemmed more from those concerns, of course. Thank you.
No, that's clear. Before proceeding with answers, did any more council members have questions? Okay, so to answer you first, the repeater on Paris Hill is only for the emergency services, but rightfully so, Wells Bay area, but also other areas by the sulfur mine, there's other areas that are not, doesn't have good coverage, but this is something that will be addressed with the RDI by the national government. And which we as local government, we also address it with them to see, but the ultimate competency lies with them. Regarding Carnival, I do agree what you're saying. There are a lot more people on the island, and yes, more police come, but your message is clear that, we need to assess also and be proactive instead of reactive. So these are things which we also address with the police department well prior to Carnival, but, let's say, we had said about threats and such, that they can deal with those in a timely manner before it escalates further into unnecessary violence. I now move on to Island Council Member Charles. He also wanted to make use of the oral question time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is in line with the recent water shortages that we've had on the island. I know that there's been some information since, but I think it's important for the community to understand what is the nature of the disruptions and what is being done to ensure that they are limited as much as possible. So in recent weeks, residents in different parts of the island have experienced interruptions or shortages in the water distribution system. And given the importance of reliable water supply for households, businesses, schools, and other essential services, I would like to ask the Executive Council the following questions. Can the Executive Council explain what caused the recent lack of water in the water distribution system around the island? Which areas were affected and for how long? Has the issue now been completely addressed, or are there still vulnerabilities in the system that could affect water supply in the coming weeks? And considering that we are entering a dry period, what steps are being taken to prevent or mitigate a similar disruption in the future? And given that water is a basic necessity, can Executive Council assure residents that the recent situation has been fully evaluated and that concrete measures are being taken before the dry period places additional pressure on the system? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Charles. Commissioner Zegers, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon again. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Charles. A very important and relevant topic, especially in the past weeks. Also one that was very frustrating for a lot of people in the community. So good that you bring these forward. Like you mentioned, there was some communication about it during the past periods, but also maybe this is a bit more of a technical explanation of what was going on. Well, the first to start, the system is it's about 10 years old, so, you can't expect that eventually things will go wrong. And disruptions were primarily caused by air entering the water distribution network due to aging infrastructure, which affected pump performance and system stability. And this was regards to the pumps down at the harbor, specifically the pumps below the SEC power plant. So it was never necessarily an issue about water production. It was more about the ability to get the water pumped from those storage cisterns to the rest of the network here in the bottom. In collaboration with VEI is Vitens Evidence International. 2 technicians came in and modifications were implemented, including the installation of additional pumps, which have resolved the issue. The areas mainly affected were those supplied through the filling station here in the bottom. This lasted for about 2-3 months. It would have been resolved sooner, but it took time to source the pumps that were needed. That because how the system works right now, there's inline pumps, and that's where the air was being generated from. And now we have the same inline pumps, but we also have pumps that work as a foot valve in the cistern itself. So there's a continuous pressurized flow of water that's already reaching the inline pumps. And since those were installed, we're able to now get the water even at a higher capacity than before, up the road and into the bottom. And you also asked about, has it been completely addressed? Yes. There's actually still the technicians here on the island that's doing a very thorough evaluation of the entire network to ensure that, we can better prepare for things like this when it happens. You also asked about, since we're entering the dry period, what steps are being done to prevent this from happening again? Well, several preventative measures have been implemented, including inspections of vulnerable infrastructure components, procurement of spare pumps, and strengthening maintenance preparedness through increased availability of spare parts and equipment. In addition, continued emphasis is being placed on responsible water use. I think that needs to be highlighted, and perhaps, we need to have an independent campaign about that again. That was something that we used to do more on a regular basis when we didn't have such a system in place. But at the end of the day, the system's a system, but as people who live here, we also have a responsibility to be maybe perhaps a bit more conservative of how we use water, because it is a natural resource, and we see throughout the world where it can be quite limited. And can the Executive Council, can we assure that something like this doesn't happen again, especially now during the dry period? Of course, things can happen, not just water, but electricity. The governor mentioned earlier, Ascension Day, everything went down with telecommunications. So, while we have taken steps to prevent it from happening, and, we still have the team here doing a very thorough analysis of everything. We've ordered additional parts, even, additional pumps to what we just installed. There's 2 more coming like those. So in the event one does go bad, we have spares. We are doing everything that can be done to ensure that, this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. Were there any follow-up questions? Island Council Member Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I appreciate the technical update from the Commissioner. I think it's good to hear how the system works and, what has been done to address it. And, but also I want to get a better insight into the measures that are being taken, because, there's this idea that in leadership, you should always be prepared for what could happen. And that if you say, I didn't think that this would happen, that you've already failed. And we know we are vulnerable. We don't have water necessarily running to the home on a regular basis. You mentioned electricity, you mentioned the telephone service. So we recognize there can be outages that we can't always address. But I have asked questions about the water supply in the past because, while we can live without electricity, we can live without telephone service, living without water is only possible for a very short period of time. Sabre's history is just filled with stories about water shortages. Years ago, when people lived on Middle Island and the water, they didn't have any water supply. They'd have to drink brackish yellow water. That's how bad water was on this island. And we have grown and we have developed, and hopefully, and fortunately, we are beyond those times. So my question is more in line with, I have asked about when do we notice and when do plans or procedures begin when we realize that, for instance, there's a shortage of water, that now we need to take action. Is there a correlation between the amount of water on the island and then recognizing that something needs to be done? That's more what I was interested in. For instance, in this current situation, I think maybe it was February, already March, April, that we started seeing problems, and then all of a sudden, it was at a critical point. How do we prevent ourselves from getting to the critical point? That's my question.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, there's a few things that's happening, and yeah, I can again get technical about what's being done. You know, for example, there's a water hammer impact, and you know that has, you know, that puts significant strain on an already very old system. And what causes water hammer is when the truckers, for example, and that's a problem here at the bottom filling station, when they close off the valve too quick, it creates like a vibration in the pipe, which eventually causes leakage, and yeah, it's not good for the pipes. So a measure that has been taken is to slow down their ability to close off the system. This has not been well received by the truckers because, you know, before they could fill their trucks in something like 7 or 8 minutes, and now it takes them like 13 or 14 minutes to fill their trucks. But it does preserve the infrastructure that's in place. Not something nice to do for the truckers, but something that's important to ensure that, you know, we don't fall back in the same system that with us damaged infrastructure. You know, also looking at putting in a redundant line that you can have the old line that's in place, and you know that line, I believe, that goes from by the hospital to the range, and that's where the fire hydrants were put in place. I believe that's being there, and maybe Councilmember Wilson might know better than me. But I believe that was maybe done in the early 90s or something like that, because you know we're not able to find a file with it that says exactly when it was done and who did it, and see, you know, the details of the project. And you know that I believe is also a big step, because right now when the truckers turn on the pipe here at the filling station, it also prevents water from being pumped up in the range, because it's one pipe that does the filling, but then also one that does the same pipe that does the replenishing. So the water coming up goes up through the same pipe that's doing the filling of the trucks. And also maybe good to know is that the rental agreement that HESCON had, or HES had, with the storage facilities at the Fort Bay, you know, that expires at the end of this month. And what that does, which is quite significant, is that it doubles the storage capacity of our water at the harbor. Not just at the harbor itself, but also in the Fort Gut, because there was multiple cisterns, and this goes back to the very early days when they initially started with a water plant. Half of the storage went to them, half of the storage went to Aquasap. That agreement is soon ending, so all of that storage now, yeah, goes over to Aquasap. So what happens is that, you know, the ability of Aquasap to generate water, that's not the question at this moment. It was more so about getting it here to the bottom. And indeed, you've asked questions in the past about, you know, how much water is necessary. You know, we just don't have that local ability to determine, you know, how much is needed, you know, if we're in a drought for 6 weeks, or if we're in a drought for 16 weeks. What we do have is storage of, for example, of Seba Splash, based on the advice from VEI again. And of course, you know, there's storage in different areas, and event there's a hurricane or it's a landslide, and certain parts of the island become isolated. But I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question. And yeah, again, you know, the local capacity to really give something that has real value to maybe the answer that you want to have, I think that's quite difficult to provide.
Thank you, Commissioner. Island Council Member Every.
I just want to acknowledge the challenge, and I want to acknowledge the development, the growth from where we were to where we are right now. But I do hope that in the future we can take steps to ensure that we address this, so that we can have an understanding of when it's becoming critical. You know, because we cannot, rainfall, which a lot of homes rely on, is becoming less and less predictable. Sometimes you can have long periods of drought. You know, it's happening around the world. You have long periods of drought, and then you can have these intense periods of rainfall. Then you have a full system for a short period of time, and then a long time without any water. So I think we do have to invest in the research so that we can have a system in place that is resilient, because that's what matters here. Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council Member Charles. Island Council Member Every.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up on the whole water issue. It's more, of course, I think the answer you provided were sufficient. My question is more along the lines of the pocket for the residents. Did it cost the residents more to have the water transported? And is this something, I think, that you can actually plan ahead if something like this does happen, that, let's say, residents from Zions Hill don't have to pay the full price, or because I did see a lot of complaints and some concerns within the community in regards to the pricing of the water.
Thank you, Island Council Member Ms. Every. Commissioner Zegers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also did see the complaints on social media about price variations, and I believe that how that was mainly misinterpreted by the drivers, because in the contract it says that if one of the filling stations is down for an X amount of period, and it causes longer transportation routes, that the difference can be compensated, but not compensated by the consumer, provided by the organization. And, you know, I do think that how it was easier for the truckers just to say, well, pay the extra $20 rather than, you know, making a report and saying, well, I did, you know, 25 loads and, you know, it should cost, you know, 20 extra per load. But we are busy working to see, you know, doing a bit of an investigation to see how big of an impact that was and how many people it impacted. But at the end of the day, I think it was just, you know, the way the truckers saw the contract and how they executed it. But it shouldn't have been at the expense of the individuals or the consumer.
Thank you, Commissioner Zegers. Island Council Lady, Ms. Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on the water issue. The commissioner said that, you know, he mentioned twice that the pumps are very old. It's an old system, 10 years old. And just wondering if a maintenance plan is in the works, because, I don't think we need to wait another 10 years to think about buying pumps and pipes. And so is a maintenance plan being drafted to mitigate this for the future? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Member Ms. Matthew. Commissioner.
So maybe a bit of a misunderstanding, or maybe I wasn't clear from the onset. The pumps themselves aren't 10 years. The pumps have been replaced several times during that period. The pipes were installed, about 10 years ago, and the ones that run between the hospital and the range, even much longer. You know, like pumps, for example, we have like 5 or 6 spare pumps. So, you know, we make sure that we have those on hand in the event that something needs to be changed, we can quickly, you know, swap those out. And, you know, together with VEI, you know, we are looking at, you know, how we can work towards more preventative maintenance, because they do visit twice a year. So when they visit, they do a thorough analysis, you know, they fix what needs to be fixed. And, you know, we've never necessarily experienced an interruption like what we've had just, you know, the past period where it started to suck air into the system, and because of that, I couldn't keep the water moving. But we are looking to, you know, install that redundant line. I believe that how that would make a big difference. Allows us that, you know, if something goes wrong on one, we can quickly switch over to the other. But, you know, VEI does help us with the maintenance and does have things scheduled already in advance. So when they come, it's not coming to necessarily, you know, solve a problem that we say, well, something is broken, come fix it. They already have that scheduled to come to make adjustments in the system that had been planned even from before the previous visit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Island Council Member Ms. Every.
Yeah, just a question about the continuity. in terms of the company, DeVay, you said it's called? In terms of investing in the local capacity, is it an idea then to have the local team trained in the event of something like this, that the company, well, I think for continuity, don't necessarily have to come to the island, that we have the local expertise on island? Is this something that's being explored?
Thank you, Councilmember. Commissioner?
Well, as much as possible, we do try to involve them during when the team is here. VEI is a combination of two of the biggest water companies in the Netherlands. So Vitens Evides International, that's an organization that provides support worldwide and not just to Saba. So, you know, technology also changes. And of course, because they are so big and so involved, you know, they're able to introduce, you know, different technologies that, yeah, if the group is just working on it here on Saba, they wouldn't necessarily know about it because they're not exposed to it. For example, one of the things that they were scheduled to come here to was to measure some automated measurement tool that would go into the cistern to measure the level of salt versus chlorine. And that is something that would be new to our system that would maybe have an impact onto, you know, how Saba Splash produces what they're doing at the water bottling plant. So because you can also imagine that things go wrong in between those visits, and for the most part, you know, that's done locally. You know, whether it's support via a phone call or just the local knowledge is already there that they can make them tweaks even without that phone call. So already, as much as possible, we try to ensure that how that's done.
Thank you. Island Councilmember, Ms. Every.
Yeah, it's good to know that. My question is more along the lines of actually training local capacity. I mean, even getting the school kids, the graduating classes involved, that maybe this is something that they can pursue through that same company. You know, not necessarily on island, that they can, that's more along the process, the thought process, where I'm thinking, yeah, where I'm going then.
Thank you.
Yeah, something that I'm sure can be explored, and yeah, I'm positive that how the organization itself would be open to something like that.
Island Council Lady Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to clarify there a while ago. So, indeed, Commissioner, you did say that the system was old. So I make a mistake, I say the pumps, but indeed the pipes. But you didn't answer the question. So, in the interim of VEI coming to the island, and we have, right now we know, okay, these pipes were there for 10 years or more or whatever. So what happens in the next 10 years or maybe the next 5 years? Do we have a maintenance plan? Because what happens if this company, for example, can't come to the island, or we just wait until they come to the island? And of course, you just alluded to the fact that on island we could do assistance over the phone, etc. But what are our plans? Because if you think about it from a different perspective, this is the plan that's in place right now with the current executive council, for example. And I'm happy that you hear that you could explain more. But what happens in the event we have an election next year and there's a new executive council? And then what? So do we have something in place? Is there some kind of documentation, something that we can look into? Because I think we need to have a plan B. Besides just having this one company come in every now and then, twice a year. Yeah, I think it's necessary to have a plan B. So I just want to clarify if you were saying that we don't have something in place. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Matthew. Commissioner.
Well, I do believe I said how there is something in place, because when they do visit, they already know from well in advance what they're coming here to do. And the agreement that we have with this international organization isn't an ad hoc one either. You know, there's a yearly agreement. It comes with a retainer fee. So it's by no means free to the public entity. They get paid well for the services that they provide. But it's, you know, it's based on terms of reference. And, part of that is ensuring that the necessary updates is done, when it's required. To say that how, there's a 10-year plan onto the pipes, a pipe is a pipe. If a pipe breaks, a pipe can be fixed, and that can be done locally. And, you can't necessarily plan when a pipe will break. The expertise that's provided is more technical in nature, what concerns pumps, what concerns equipment by Sabre Splash, and not necessarily based on piping. But I definitely see your point.
Thank you all. That concludes this set of questions, first posed by Island Council Member Mr. Charles regarding water. We now proceed with questions in the oral question time by Island Council Lady Miss Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For this round, I have a couple of topics. So as we all know, the 36-hour work week was implemented for some time now within the public entity Sabre, the government organization. And on April 14, 2025, it became mandatory for additional departments that may not have been working their full 8 hours based on previous agreements or historical agreements. So I would like to get an update on how this is going in practice with these departments. Is monitoring being applied consistently across all departments? And I ask this because some employees are having salary deductions for not meeting hours, while others in similar situations are not. And I think that fairness and consistency are important. And also, I think it's important for our civil service apparatus to know if leadership is also being held to the same standards as staff. When it comes to population growth and pressure on services, I think we all know is a growing concern among the residents about the influx of people on the island. We spoke about this a little bit in the previous meeting. So I'd like to know, how does the Executive Council monitor population growth and its impact on public services? And how are we planning for service capacity as the population increases? Is the Executive Council taking a more active role in its part of the work permit process? Meaning, when somebody applies for a work permit at an IND, there is an instance when it comes to the Executive Council and it needs to be approved. So again, is the Executive Council taking a more active role in this part of the work permit process? And how are we planning for the long-term impact of families joining workers on the island when it comes to like our schools being overcrowded, etc.? I understood that there is integrity training going on right now. And I'm curious to know if the Executive Council can clarify if leadership, management, and those in decision-making roles are also participating in integrity trainings. On recent reports just came out in the last couple of months from the Education Council, from the Ombudsman, also a committee on healthcare in the Netherlands, and the NCDR reports. I was wondering what the Executive Council's thoughts were on the findings of these reports and what actions or follow-up steps are being considered for Sabre. On learning and development within our organization, I remember while getting the presentation, a new organizational structure. One of the things that was mentioned and stood out to me was creating opportunities for people to grow within the organization. And I'd like to know if this is really happening in practice. Can the Executive Council explain how training opportunities are being distributed? And how do we ensure that upward mobility is not limited to a select few? Because some civil servants are under the impression that they can't do certain trainings. So I just want some clarity on that. And lastly, on the turnover, exit interviews, and retention of locals at the public entity Sabre. Now, I remember when growing up, the old Sabrans used to say that once you get a government job, you were set for life. On Sabre, that was the goal. A government job meant stability, security, and benefits. But now more and more I'm seeing that a lot of people are leaving the government organization and actively looking for a way out. And of course, I fully support ambition, growth, and people wanting to try something new. But I'm also seeing people leave for jobs that pay less, and that makes me stop to wonder what's really going on. So does the Executive Council have oversight into turnover trends within the organization? Are exit interviews being conducted? What is the strategy to retain staff and encourage our local people to return home and take up positions after their studies? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady, Ms. Saskia Matthew. These are mine. Here we go. First of all, you posed questions regarding the 36-hour work week and the monitoring, and you rightfully said about fairness and consistency. This is something that is now a little over a year within our organization, and you asked specifically how is the 36-hour work week going in practice. In general, it is going better than we had expected, but there are departments where there could be issues that it needs to still be worked on. So specifically, there could be departments that with the island secretary in the different domains, we are working on improving what is taking place within those departments. Because you asked, about applying it consistently across all departments. So we are monitoring that with the domain managers and with the island secretary and HRM. You asked if the leadership is also being are they also being held to the same standard as staff? That should be the case, and yes, they should be. But I can take it with being such a small island, there are discussions at times where things may pop up, but in general, this should be the case. The next set of questions were regarding population growth and pressure on services. And you also asked about how are we planning for service capacity as our population increase, about the role of the Executive Council with regard to work permits and the impacts that it could have with families joining workers on the island. This is a very relevant topic, and as we know, last year that study was published, and the local governments, we sent a reaction regarding the report that was with Mr. Glenda today was one of the members of that. But what I would suggest is that a more in-depth discussion be held between the Executive Council and the Island Council regarding these topics, because it does affect our island. Our island, the demographics are changing. We notice in the service industry, it leans towards a certain demographic, and other areas it leans towards other demographics. But nevertheless, I think it's important that you, the elected representatives of our island, together with the commissioners, discuss these very relevant topics. How do we see our island in the next years? So I would suggest to move forward with that type of discussion. Integrity training, there is an integrity training going on right now, today. Actually, the basic integrity training is intended for all employees, including our managers, and that is happening today. And also, when the new island governor takes office, a training will also be provided for the Executive Council. Today, the training sessions have been well received, and the primary objective at this point is to identify and articulate the core values that underpin an organization of integrity. You asked about the different reports, the Executive Council's position on the Education Council, the Healthcare Report, and the NCDR reports, all very relevant reports. But as of right now, the Executive Council doesn't have one specific position on it, but it's something that is also relevant for discussion between the island and Executive Councils moving forward because they do affect the residents of our island. The next one was about learning and development. How are training opportunities being distributed? We had from HRM development interviews were made across the organization. An inventory was made, and based on the needs and wishes, trainings were offered. For example, financial awareness. There was a postgraduate Kingdoms Affairs course, conflict resolution and mediation training. There was interview skills management training. So it offers a range of courses, also beginners, computer training programs. But like anything else, it's a work in progress, and we need to reach our employees. Also the first aid, fire and evacuation training, the BHV training. Language courses, Dutch, Spanish, and English. These are also offered via SEBA Reach. And we are also doing specific trainings for departments like the BAVPOL, and then also at the daycare, the high school training. The census office, we had one with the registry, and health and safety in the workplace. Point you brought up, a question, how do we ensure the upward mobility is not limited to a selected few? Again, this is something which we need to, as an organization, from the top down, but also from the bottom up. So from the Island Secretariat to the domains, down to the department heads, you know, to take our people along in the process of developing them and coaching them. Then you asked about the turnover, rightfully so. You know, when people, locals got a job at the government, as you said, you know, they were set, you know, you got your, you begin and then you get your, Rolly laughing. Rolly knows. Then you get permanent service, and then you pay into their pension, and you was there, you were set for life. Do we have an oversight on the trends and the why persons could possibly be leaving the organization? There is a high turnover rate at the daycare, and this is, we don't have statistics on it, but it is something with HRM and the Island Secretariat that we have to monitor what, you know, with the persons like you had suggested, or if an exit interview, we don't have a formal exit interview, but most times people do, when they resign, they state why. I myself, I asked some of the persons, you know, are you sure that you want to leave? And some of them do state that yes, they know of that. Also, some of the ones who are around 60 that chose to go on early retirement. What we do with those persons is we have a letter which is, you know, it's clear to them what they would be earning when they, if they choose early retirement. A retaining staff, is there a strategy to retain staff? There's no formal strategy, but it is something that is very important in any organization to retain staff and to support our locals to return home after the studies. This is also, we are participating in the Top CN initiative, and this is a year-long program that offers support and professional training in collaboration with the CN Academy. We also have the VNG exchange program, which we're trying to encourage also with some of our civil servants, that not only persons come to our island, but that we could also send some of our civil servants to the Netherlands and also here in the region for their learning and development. And that is about it. I give you back the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one clarifying question. Under the topic of learning and development, you mentioned that there was a development interview that happened across the organization. Now, just again for clarity, this interview was carried out with all 250-something civil servants, or?
That's what I understood. What I understood was that HRM, Human Resource Management, together with the different departments, they were, in the different domains, they would interview the different civil servants to ask them what do they see as, what would they like to explore within their different departments. But then reality could always be different.
If I can add something, Mr. Chairman, what I understand is that it's an initiative that started this year that's being rolled out. And I know it's happening firsthand because I've also had civil servants come to me to complain, at my age, why do I need to develop? Within my role, why is my time being wasted to go to these types of meetings? So I don't think it's just something that's floating around, because I have first-hand experiences where people have even complained about having to go to these types of meetings. But, whether it's reached every department, every civil servant, I can't say yes or no about that, but I do believe it's being rolled out.
Island Council Member, Mr. Every. Oh, I thought, yeah, he's on. Okay, Council Lady, who? Ladies first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to just say this. I also, for example, had a good example last week. I was in a meeting and somebody forwarded me a message and they asked, I need to go to this. And that was concerning the integrity training. Now, like I said, I was in a meeting, so I didn't really pay attention to the message. But I remember saying, like, yes, it's mandatory, like, you have to do it. But we didn't have a conversation. But then that also tells me that, well, I saw the message. So the message was just like, you need to be here at this time. But it's not explained why. And if I go back to a meeting from maybe 2 years ago, when I asked about the learning and development, when it was first being, not executed, but developed, that's the word. When it was first being developed, one of the questions I asked was, would it be mandatory? So if you have certain civil servants in a certain role for X amount of years, can they just say, well, I don't want to do this? Because then the question is, well, can you continue doing your job without certain skills? Because then again, we kind of giving this example that certain people have to do certain things and others not. So, and then you have other situations where, of course, I have experience where most projects, ideas just land at the top and it stays there, and then it just rolls out with the staff. There's no explanation, there's no questions, there's no what do you want to do. But on the flip side, there are people that say, hey, maybe I want to do a management course that is on the list of learning and development, but then they're being told, no, this is just for department heads. So that also feels like, you're stunting growth. And of course, maybe you might be in a position where this is it, but I mean, yeah, you could also be able to learn. Maybe tomorrow I want to do something else. And that is actually the main question. If the learning and development program is for everybody, then it should be tailored for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Matthew. Your point is duly taken, because it stems back to what you said initially about being fair and consistent. So across the organization, as much as possible, we need to grow and develop also that layer to HRM, and that they are also aware of this within the organization, that we need to train and develop our civil servants. And the council member, Mr. Charles.
Who asked the question?
He could have, yeah.
I'm just curious because I think we do have information market with the HR department soon, so I just hope that we can also get, I think the questions from the council lady are very valid questions, so I do hope in that meeting maybe some answers can be prepared so that it informs the discussion rather than we have to ask the questions again. So, thank you.
So I just understood from our registrar, there is an information market which is being planned for the council, so I do hope that this can address more of the questions posed. That concludes the oral question time, agenda point number 4. We now move on to agenda point number 5, incoming and outgoing correspondence and announcements during the period April the 11th to May the 15th. None? Then we have, for the first part, agenda point 5, okay. Yeah. Okay, so we have Island Council Lady, Ms. Saskia Matthew, for agenda point number 5, based on the incoming and outgoing correspondence and announcements during the period of April 11th to May the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to flag a couple of letters that came in. Letter from Top Tier Rentals and letters from Mr. De Vries.
Okay, thank you. So those will be flagged. We now move on to 5.1, Island Council incoming and outgoing correspondence. That's 5. Hmm? Okay, so then 5.2, Executive Council decision list. Island Council Lady, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to flag two things from April 14th. There's one about the visit to ministries in The Hague and attending the IPDC conference. And the second one, April 21st, provision, building, and road maintenance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so registrar has those noted. Then 5. Mr. Char. Okay, one more for flagging by Island Council Lady Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to flag the decision list from April 14th, 3.0.1 building permit.
Thank you. Mr. Charles also has something to flag.
From April 14th, proposal for the 2026 budget amendment, Monuments Council and Monuments Fund.
Thank you. Are there any more to flag? Press your feature your button. No? Okay. Then we move on to, that was 5.2. 5.3, written questions to the Executive Council, 5.3. None? And then 5.4, answers to written questions to the Executive Council. Councilman Every.
Yeah, I just have a general question to the answers to the written question, is that in regards to the answers, can we get a commitment from the Executive Council that they will respond to the written questions in the time that is stipulated by law? And if that is not the case, also inform us that, you know, there's a hiccup or something like that. And general question, is the Executive Council satisfied with those answers that are provided to those written questions?
Thank you, Island Council Member Ms. Every. Regarding your points, well, your general questions, but also your points are duly noted, and it's something that we have to take and back to the executive council and discuss. But rightfully so, yeah, they do have to be answered in a timely fashion. And if not, then it has to be explained. But also the manner in which they are answered, has to be clear for everyone.
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
do have made a mistake when I flagged the two things. So the AC letter was for the incoming outgoing correspondence, and for the 5.2, I have from the meeting of April 28th, the basic decision list, 3.1.0, assistant monitoring and startup rainwater management. So if the registrar has some concerns, then I'll just address it after the meeting
Okay.
to ensure that it's clear.
Good.
Thank you.
So our registrar, she has taken note, and if necessary, she will consult you to ensure that everything is done. We now move on to agenda point number 6, Island Council Proposal 2026, number 2, the first budget amendment, and the first quarter implementation report 2026. This was handled in the Central Committee meeting. Questions were posed, those were answered, and the request was made if this proposal could be adopted without a roll call vote. So I look around again, if that is so, yes. So Island Council Proposal 2026, number 2, the first budget amendment and first quarter implementation report 2026 is approved. We now continue to agenda point number 7, motions. We have a motion, received a motion today by Island Council member, Mr. Charles. I give Mr. Charles the floor to read his motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, coincidentally, I have a motion today, and yesterday, coincidentally, Winnie made quite a statement, and I think it was not well received, rightly so, by many people on the island. They've tried to make light of a very difficult situation. Many people on the island have experienced the high cost of connectivity over the years. I can recall we were having a discussion not too long ago with one of my cousins recently that they can remember a time when it was $60 to go between St. Martin and Sable, and today, it's well, if not close to $400. And there's no possibility in sight of lowering it without some sort of intervention. I just also want to draw the attention of many people to the reality of what we saw in another Caribbean airline, literally called Caribbean Airlines, where they've removed themselves from a number of destinations because of the losses that they have taken. We don't want to follow suit. We don't want that, the air connectivity and also all connectivity is removed from the island. So I think it's important that there's structural funding to ensure that connectivity between the islands remains a reality. We had a presentation from the CEO of Winnie when we were in St. Martin. He explained, the cost of doing business. He explained, and he made a comparison between connectivity on Saba and other islands of similar or greater populations. And of course, not everything we agreed with, because I think, and I share that with him, that Sabans have an affinity to Winnie. We literally carved out a piece of our rock so to ensure that we could have a runway that would give us access to other islands. And, slowly but surely, we sort of see it slipping away and becoming too high of a cost for us and too high of a burden for our people to bear. And it's something that needs to be reversed. Maybe a year or two ago, I asked the Executive Council to come up with a position paper to present to the ministry to explain why connectivity was important for us. I do recognize the capacity in the organization isn't always present to assist, so I assisted in providing one that maybe gives a direction. It may not be a comprehensive or cohesive document, but I think it gives the, so to speak, the meat of the matter. And I'm sure it will be made available for everybody and the public so that they could read this document. And the document is entitled, let me just, it's a draft position paper for the Island Council of Sabre, and it's about ensuring affordable, reliable, and redundant connectivity to and from Sabre. It addresses, of course, air connectivity, but also maritime connectivity, because maritime connectivity shouldn't be one or the other, it should be both. Because if you can't go by plane and you can't go by boat, you need one or the other to make sure we can get on and off the island. So I drafted the paper along with this motion so that we could begin to elucidate to the persons in the Netherlands why PSO is important for the people of Sabre. Motion, affordable and reliable connectivity to and from Sabre. The Island Council of the Public Entity Sabre, in its meeting of today, May 26, 2026, having taken note of the increasing challenges related to the affordability, reliability, and overall resilience of connectivity between Sabre and St. Martin, the continued reduction in both air and maritime connectivity available to the island over recent years, the accompanying position paper entitled Ensuring Reliable and Redundant Connectivity to and from Sabre, the importance of connectivity to the economic and social future of Sabre, considering that Sabre remains entirely dependent on external connectivity for healthcare, education, tourism, commerce, logistics, and access to essential services. Connectivity to St. Martin is not a luxury or convenience, but a lifeline for the people and economy of Sabre. The current cost of transportation places significant pressure on residents, restricts mobility, and limits access to opportunities and essential services. Airfare between Sabre and St. Martin regularly ranges between $300 and $400 round trip, levels that are unsustainable for many residents, which significantly reduce Sabre's competitiveness as a tourism destination. Despite Sabre's close proximity to St. Martin, one of the largest tourism destinations in the Northeastern Caribbean, Sabre receives less than 1% of the total number of visitors arriving there annually. The current pricing structure and limitations and activity restrict Sabre's ability to benefit from existing tourism flows in the region and limit broader economic development opportunities. Ferry connectivity has historically played an important role in supporting affordability, tourism growth, and day trip visitation to the island. The loss of the Edge Ferry represents a meaningful reduction in overall connectivity capacity and tourism access to Sabre. Sabre's connectivity challenges are further compounded by structural realities, including the short runway at Sabre at One Tree Raskin Airport, which limits operations to smaller aircraft and restricts passenger capacity. Operational limitations related to weather, daylight operations, and congestion at the Princess Juliana International Airport. The exposed open water passage between Sabre and St. Martin, which creates inherently more challenging maritime operating conditions than many protected ferry routes elsewhere. Sabre does not possess the scale, passenger market, or operational environment necessary to support the type of large-scale ferry operations often referenced in larger jurisdictions. Connectivity limitations directly constrain economic diversification, tourism growth, social mobility, and the quality of life on the island. Believes that connectivity must be recognized as a public good and basic necessity. The current state of connectivity to and from Sabre is unsustainable and requires structural intervention. Affordability must be treated as a central policy priority. Air and maritime connectivity should not be viewed as competing alternatives, but as complementary parts of a single integrated system. Redundancy in connectivity is not inefficiency, but a necessary condition for resilience for a geographically isolated island. A public service obligation, PSO, for air connectivity is necessary to ensure minimum levels of accessibility, affordability, and predictability. Maritime connectivity must continue to be strengthened to support affordability, tourism development, and overall system resilience. The Kingdom of the Netherlands should apply a consistent and equitable approach to connectivity to connectivity support across all island territories. And hereby request the Executive Council to, 1, formally transmit the accompanying position paper to the Government of the Netherlands, including the ministries and parliamentary committees responsible for kingdom relations, infrastructure and water management, economic affairs and regional development, continuing advocating for the establishment of a structural public service obligation, PSO, for air connectivity between Saba and St. Martin, continuing with relevant stakeholders regarding sustainable maritime connectivity solutions appropriate to Saba's geographic and infrastructural realities, and advocate for an integrated connectivity framework in which air and maritime transport operate as a complementary components of a single system, continue pursuing measures aimed at improving affordability and accessibility for both residents and visitors, keep the Island Council periodically informed regarding major developments, negotiations, and policy initiatives related to connectivity, and proceeds to the order of the day.
Thank you, Island Council Member Mr. Charles. I now open up the floor for the other Island Council members to discuss and debate and deliberate this motion. The young man, press the button.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, everybody present. I fully support this motion and will vote for it. Mr. Chairman, a child, 12 years old, a round trip ticket now in July month. Not taking out this from Winnie, from Holland to St. Martin is wrong from Holland to St. Martin is $1,915. And from Saba, and from St. Martin to Saba and back, that ticket is $515. Come on. A child, 12, 13 years old. Things gotta change. I support the motion 100% from Councilman Charles. I also would like to congratulate and support, I think, the Council Lady Matthew and Every sent a letter also to the second chamber. Really support that. Very much continue. Something really have to be done with Winnie. You know what I mean? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 4.
Thank you, Councilman Ms. Wilson. Council Lady Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I saw on a news video a few days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, and I shared it with my colleague Charles as well, where 118 million euros was approved for European Dutch people to be able to travel by train during the summer. 118 million. And here we literally are begging for much less. A pinch possibly in comparison to 118 million. And we're talking about, again, for the summer. And here we are talking about structural funding yearly. Like I mentioned, that would cost a pinch of this. But yet we remain a policy discussion. And we continue to see examples of this with other parts of the kingdom as well, like the islands outside of the Netherlands and so forth. So I would like to stress, and we all continue to stress, that connectivity is not just about travel. For Saba, connectivity is about survival, opportunity, dignity, and fairness, as the motion clearly states. When our people cannot afford to travel, they are cut off from leisure, healthcare, education, family, business, opportunity, the list continues. When our visitors cannot reach us easily or affordably, our economy also suffers. And when our air and sea connections are reduced or unreliable, our entire island becomes more vulnerable, which we all also know. Saba cannot continue to carry this burden alone. We are a small island with unique geographical realities, limited infrastructure, and no alternative road to the outside world. For us, a flight or a ferry is not a luxury, it is our bridge to the rest of the world. This motion rightfully recognizes that air and maritime connectivity must work together and not against each other. It also sends a clear message that affordability, reliability, and redundancy must be treated as necessities and not optional extras. If the kingdom speaks of equality, then that equality must also be felt in access, mobility, and opportunity for the people of Saba as well. Our residents deserve a fair chance to travel, to receive care, something as simple as dental care even, to study, to work, and to grow our economy without being punished for the cost of our connectivity. As a council, we have all addressed these conversations and concerns too many times to count. And although progress has been made where it comes to discussions, as we address these things to the ministries multiple times, and finally we see the acknowledging of the importance of a PSO. So I am happy to see that we finally have something on paper, and when it comes time, I will support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Ms. Peterson. Island Council Member Ms. Every.
Yeah, good afternoon again, everyone. I definitely will be supporting this motion because this is something that we have been, we've had numerous discussions, as Council Lady Peterson just mentioned, with the various ministries. We even had discussions with the previous State Secretary in which he mentioned about using drones, possible drones to airlift people between the islands. This is something that I think is very important. I do think, as Vito always says, Councilmember Charles, the devil is in the details. I think we should include into that motion that it's not just between Saba and St. Martin. Statia should also be included into that. And you should build into that same PSO a sort of evaluation moment, possibly after a year or a year and a half, to see exactly how things, or if we do achieve that, of course, that is the hope. But yeah, that's just my instinct.
Thank you, Council Member Ms. Every. Council Lady Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to start off a little different. I want to thank Councilman Charles for taking the initiative to draft this position paper. I know this is something that he's been talking about for a while now, from the time I've been sitting up here. And the reason why I started on that route is because we talk a lot about, you know, the support that we need to get from the national government, and rightfully so. But I think sometimes it's also important to take our own responsibilities, because up until now, we have not presented them with anything besides the conversations that we've been having. So I think this is a good step. And again, I want to applaud you for doing this. And I will vote for it. And then we could get a little bit further in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Island Council Lady Ms. Matthew. I look around, is there a need for a head count of vote? We can, if you all can nod in approval, then, or not. I'm nudging you, not telling you what to do, but okay with that. There's no need for a roll call vote. I see all heads nod in approval, so this motion is approved without a roll call vote. So the motion, affordable and reliable connectivity to and from Saba, and also with a suggestion of Councilmember Ms. Every to include Statia, that we do in the future is also included. So with that, this motion is approved. We now, no more motions, right? Okay, show me a more. Next, we move on to agenda point number 8, the closing. With that, I thank you all for your indulgence, your attention, and your presence here today, and those watching via whichever medium. Thank you and have a good evening. This meeting is now closed.